The whole Galanacci brand is about like the notion of greatness. So it's exploring this kind of like self-discovery. It's my way of like discovering my own kind of like journey towards greatness, and it's a reflection of like the things that I like. It's basically pulling everything from like art, design, boxing, and fashion into like one umbrella, and just manifesting it through the brand Galanacci.
I'm a champion, I can never stop. If you put me in the square, I square up like a box. Good people, bad intentions, the tale of the tape. See the passion in my eyes, the real ones can relate. I said, I'm a champion, I can never stop. If you put me in the square, I square up like a box. Good people, bad intentions, the tale of the tape. See the passion in my eyes, the real ones can relate.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to episode 40 of the Good People, Bad Intentions podcast. My name is Matthew Pine, and our guest this week is Galanacci. Now, we had Galanacci on about a year ago in March, and the focus then was talking about his NFT collection, G the Fighter, and he's still working on that collection, but now he has kind of also been working a lot in the fashion industry. In fact, every single day he's been uploading a new fashion design, and he's going to be doing it for a whole year, so he's been putting a lot of work into that. Of course, he's also launched some clothing for the Galanacci brand and had done a successful drop for that. And he also done some work for a brand called Yeboah in the UK, and they had a drop as well. So he's been doing a lot of great things. Of course, he's also done some work with Sean Porter and the Porter Way podcast. He had designed the new logo for that. So he's been making waves, and I'm really excited to talk to him again and see what he's been up to, because we kind of both as creators have a discussion quite a bit and talk with each other. So it's great to have him on and get that inspiration and get that creative juices going. So without further ado, here's Galanacci. Hey, welcome back, Galanacci. How have you been?
What's good, Matthew? Man, I'm good, man. I'm really happy to be back here, and just chop everything up, since the last time.
It's been like a year, I think, and I know that there's been a lot of things going on with you. I kind of have some things written down as far as stuff that I want to touch base with. I know you have a lot of stuff on the go right now, but since we last talked, I saw like a month later you went to the famous Wild Card Gym, and you got to meet Emmanuel Pacquiao Jr. What was that like?
I did. Oh, that was awesome. I was there out in LA. It was like my cousin's wedding, right? So I insisted on like visiting the Wild Card Gym because they live in Carson, so it's like it wasn't too far from where the Wild Card Gym is. And I went there with my family, and I was like, wow, this is where, because obviously I grew up watching Manny Pacquiao and everything. So just being in that space where he was just training like all those legendary fights with like De La Hoya and all of that, Freddie Roach. I was like, wow, this is amazing, man. They have all the posters on the walls of fighters and everything. It just felt like, okay, this is where like legends are born and made. And on that day, my Emmanuel Jr. was just there training. So I was like, I got to meet him. That was really cool. And Freddie Roach was there too, so I got him to sign my iPad as well. So that was a really, really cool experience.
What was the atmosphere like being there? Like you said that this is the place where legends are born. What was it like when you were there?
It's just like, because obviously I've seen like all the HBO stuff, back in the day, like you'd see them filming in that Wild Card Gym. So it just has that kind of like nostalgia, like, yeah, I've seen this before, but then now I'm actually here. And I don't know, it's kind of like you're like, when you step into it, like, wow, like this is like it's like just like a regular gym, but it's like champions were here, step foot in this building. So it's just like, it's a different feeling once you're actually there, especially when you're like a proper boxing fan and you've been following Manny Pacquiao's career and from all the way from 2000s. Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing to see it in person.
And is there like any semblance that because of how popular Manny Pacquiao was and how big of a part of the gym he was, is there like a definitely like is there still like a Filipino like presence there? Is there people that have been part of his camp before that are still training there, or do you know anything of
I
that?
think when we were actually there, Mark Marsayo was training downstairs, but we weren't allowed to go in.
Okay.
But no, he has like loads of paintings on the wall. Like literally, it's a lot of Manny Pacquiao's pictures because obviously he's the main guy that came out of that gym. But there's also other guys that train there, like Gabe Rosado and all of those guys. But no, Carson, it's a Filipino heavy town. So yeah, I would say that there's a lot of Filipinos that drop in because Filipinos love like boxing. So I'm sure whenever they're around, they'll pop by and visit the gym.
Segue in now, drop in. Galanacci had its first drop not too long after that. And then I know that you've
Oh yes.
yes. How did that whole thing go? Like, I
Wow,
know that.
yeah, that was the greatness tea. So yeah, like it was like a improved version of my original greatness tea. So obviously the whole Galanacci brand is about like the notion of greatness. So it's exploring this kind of like self-discovery. Basically like it's my way of like discovering my own kind of like journey towards greatness. And then basically it's a reflection of like the things that I like. It's basically pulling everything from like art, design, boxing and fashion into like one umbrella and just manifesting it through the brand Galanacci. But yeah, no, I was able to sell a couple here and there because obviously small brand, the I'm focusing on quality, so I get like my blanks from like Portugal and stuff, and get everything done in the UK like screen printed. So yeah, no, it's always good to experience things like this, like putting out product that you actually have it has meaning and has weight to it, and just going through the whole process from designing to actually putting out the product and delivering it to the customers. So yeah, it's been an experience so far.
And you're like the wrapping king, because I've seen like the attention to detail that you put in every single time, every delivery
Yeah,
that you
there,
do.
yeah. Absolutely. No,
How
because
did you develop that process? Because I mean, you got like box art, you got like wrapping paper, everything. Like, how did you go through that whole process to get the product as polished as it is?
yeah, because obviously I'm like an artist at heart, so I'm really my attention to detail is very high. So I don't like to cut corners when I'm like, especially when people are paying money for a product that I've created. I want them to when they it's not just like the design that's good. It has to be the whole kind of like experience. So from the design to them receiving the actual goods and opening it and whatnot. It's yeah, it's just the attention to detail. I like to put that in every stage of giving a product out. So yeah, that's pretty much it, really, on the artistic side of things.
Yeah, because I remember when we first spoke. I know NFTs were a huge thing that we were talking about, and the whole climate has kind of changed in some respects with NFTs and
Yeah,
everything
yeah.
like that. But I know that when you talk about attention to detail, I remember that you were talking about the number of strokes that you were putting into
Absolutely.
your drawing. So like I totally get where you're coming from, because in many ways, like looking at that process of drawing, I mean, it was like how like a fingerprint has all those different little like
Yeah,
it's kind of
yeah,
like a
yeah.
fingerprint kind of process to shading and other things like that, and I could really appreciate your attention to detail.
No, it's funny that you mentioned that about the fingerprint because the way I draw now in G the Fighter, I've implemented that kind of like circular swirls that it basically mimics a fingerprint, really.
And you got like you got your signature, it's your fingerprints in the
Yeah,
drawing, the
yeah,
crime,
absolutely.
you committed the crime in the painting, and
Yeah,
your
exactly.
evidence is all there about what kind of work you've done. So It's great. I know lately you've been doing, designing the look every day for 2023.
Yeah.
How's that whole process been like?
So yeah, because with me, like the reason why I started that um, project for Galanacci, it's like okay, I'm kind of like I want to get into fashion, right? But I haven't drawn. I don't have like in my portfolio. If you look back, I don't design, I don't draw clothes. So I was like, okay, if I'm going into this fashion industry, I need to at least start drawing, like at least if even if it's one thing every day. So I was like, okay, let me just start this project. Let me design one look every single day. So at least it's a way for me to like capture ideas and put it into one drawing. So that once that whole 365 days is passed, then I can use that to reference, okay, if in the future I'm able to actually create these looks, okay, I'll be like, I can easily pull into the archives and be like, okay, I like this, this, and this, and this, instead of like kind of designing from scratch, you know. I have a foundation to kind of build on. So that's how I kind of like approach this whole kind of the designing a look every day for 365 days.
And I know you've done like similar things in the past, and I'm really impressed by that. And
Yeah.
I'm just curious, through all this exercise of doing something that you love every single day, like what are some things that you've noticed, that this has impacted your whole everyday life, like doing things like this every single day?
Yeah, the way you have kind of like seen it from like a first person view is that it slowly becomes your lifestyle because you're doing it every day. So you put out you set out a specific time. Okay, this is when I'm gonna do my drawings. It could be like an hour or less or so, but you specifically it's like a non-negotiable thing that it has to be done. So like I basically plan my life around that time frame where I'm sitting down doing the artwork or whatnot. Yeah, it just becomes a lifestyle. It like how boxers I always have it in parallel with how boxers um when they're trained for boxing, it's a lifestyle. It's not like a thing you pick up in the weekend and then carry on in the next weekend. You have to actually live it. So I applied that same philosophy the way I approach my craft in art. So that's how I kind of like to visualize it. It becomes a lifestyle because that's how, if it's a lifestyle, then it just comes naturally to you. There's no friction. It's like, okay, I need to come up and show up, get the job done, and then on to the next.
Yeah, I mean it's like you're doing your design road work, so to speak. I mean, because
Yeah, there we go. Exactly.
yeah, because like
Exactly that.
I know like people say all the time that it's good to be passionate about something, but passion can come and go, and you don't always feel
No, definitely,
passionate.
definitely.
But putting that daily practice in, you certainly put a lot of time into the craft, and yeah, I definitely think it shows. I mean, I think you're into the hundreds now, right? You're
Yeah,
well on
yeah,
your
yeah.
way.
Absolutely.
So that's really
It's
great
like
that you've
one
been
third
doing
of the
that.
way.
1/3, okay.
Yeah.
So and has there been like any like obstacles to keeping this? Like, has there been these times where it's like, you know what, this really doesn't fit today, or
Yeah, no, there's times where I'm not obviously in here because
Mhm.
obviously yeah, I have a setup like I have a kind of like camera holder like to view from bird's eye and everything. So when I'm not in here, I have to kind of like okay, I have to still do it. So there was one day where I was at the train. I did the whole thing in the train. So I got my girlfriend to just video me like drawing. So it was like okay, it's a different location, but I still need to get it done because the day was like ending soon. But yeah, it's usually those when the location changes, but you have to adapt. You just have to kind of adapt to the situation, still execute what you need to do. But yeah, it's usually just a change of locations. But then obviously it's become a habit. it's kind of like engraved in me. Like, okay, I just have to pull out the iPad or pen or a paper. So yeah, there's even that one point where maybe I spent a whole month just drawing on paper. It's a lot harder to do it on paper because on the iPad there's like features where it would mirror what you draw, so that basically it's quicker to execute the drawing. Obviously, in paper it's just freehand and everything. So there was that 1 month period where I was like, okay, let me just train my hands again, like on just natural paper to get these. And that was very challenging because I can't like undo certain things, like because obviously with an iPad you could just control and then like it'll reverse the mistakes you made. But yeah, I'd say that that's one of those challenges. But it's a fun exercise to kind of just get into the whole groove of just drawing on a piece of paper compared to like just an iPad.
Which didn't you have like a whole series of stuff on like I think a diary? So you have some
Yeah, that was
experience
back
with
a year back, a couple years back.
yeah.
Yeah, because with that, it's I use like a pen, a pencil to kind of have an outline already, and then I would draw. But with this 365 days, it's straight up like pen, so I can't erase anything really. But that's why I started doing it on the iPad so that it's just more fluid and everything's kind of like more smooth and seamless.
That's amazing that you've been able to keep up doing it this long, and I'm really looking
Yeah,
forward
it's
to
crazy.
yeah, like I love that you're doing like the month reveals, you're doing the 1/3 the way, and you're kind of document the process. Because if I'm not mistaken, when we last spoke, was it not like the whole G the Fighter, etc., was kind of inspired by what you were doing with the diary drawings before?
Yeah. Basically, the whole G to Fighter, it was the outcome from what the whole kind of like filling that diary with portraiture, because obviously that's when I kind of started. Um, that's where the drawing style was developed on that diary, and then it just bled through when I got the iPad and I started drawing more kind of detailed portraitures, which was the G the Fighter drawings of you could see behind me, literally all of that. That's where those there were the beginning drawings. But yeah. It's funny how these things kind of interconnect, even though I didn't plan them to. But it's just they just evolved and developed into these things, even though you might not see the direct correlation if you were to put the two together in front of you.
And I wanted to move now to the next thing that I noticed, which was when you were designing the logo for the Porterway podcast, and I was just curious,
Oh
like
yes,
how that whole
that's awesome.
process had come to fruition.
So they came to me like it was Ant. So that guy is very cool, very chill. He sent me a DM. I believe it was like one of their friends, like they sent the my artwork to them, and then he found it cool and then reached out to me, like, oh, I'm friends with Sean Porter. We would like to get an artwork. So I was like, oh, sweet. I'd love to send the Sean Porter drawing. So I got that done, and then I I heard about the Sean Porter's podcast, and I started to kind of like just look into it, like started listening. And then I noticed that, okay, there's like something in here, like I can see this being like a very big thing in the future. And the logo wasn't the way I saw the first kind of like logo that they had. It didn't kind of match up with how I envisioned it could be in the future. So I actually took out like my own time to just quickly design something, and then I put it in a PDF and I sent it to them. And then they were like, "Oh, there's a potential here. We'd like to work with you and actually develop this further." So that's how it all kind of like turned up. So it's because of the artworks I did that caught their attention, and then from there I saw a opportunity to help out in a different field of design to actually just be able to redesign their Port Away podcast logo. So that was a very cool experience.
Are you getting a sense now with all of the drawings you've done of boxers and everything that you've done with the boxing so far? Are you getting the sense that a lot of fighters are resonating with everything that Galanacci stands for?
I believe so because if you really look into it, it's like you can see that there's that passion in it, that there's that level of detail that separates it from just people that only pick it up art as a hobby, and do a couple of drawings here and there. But for me, there's a system. You can see that it's not just a drawing. There's a whole kind of like vision behind it, behind the whole project, which even bleeds into like other things like fashion and art design and those things.
So Sean Porter, had you on the podcast,
Mm.
and I had seen that clip. I was like, great. I was really excited for you. What was it like just going on there and like talking about what you're passionate about?
It's when you think about it, it's just crazy because obviously I used to watch these guys, like Sean Porter, he would be like fighting Ugas, Spence, all of that. And he was also Manny Pacquiao's sparring partner back in the day. So just being able to kind of like bridge that connection from someone who just started in a bedroom drawing these boxers to now having a direct connection to them and being invited into Sean Porter's podcast and being able to talk to him directly with the team as well. It's amazing because it's like you can start even if you don't have that primary connection to the industries that you'd like to be in or to operate in. You could start by doing what you love. So I love to draw. I use that as a way to bridge those two worlds, and it worked. I mean, it wasn't the my kind of intentions from the very very beginning, but I just kind of followed my intuition, and it just led to those connections naturally, which is the beautiful part of it. But yeah, no, they're very cool guys. I watch their episodes literally when it drops. It's like an hour episodes, but I stick there and watch through it because I have that support for them. But yeah, no, no, great people, and I can't wait how the actual podcast itself grows in the future.
Yeah, I love the setup that they have as well, and I just think it's definitely picking up traction, and I see Sean doing a lot of analyst work now and a lot of big fights.
Absolutely,
So it's really great. I think he's a very likable guy, and I just think it's really cool that that they're keeping their finger on the pulse as far as what art's going on in for boxing, because I do think boxing is a sport, especially other sports too, but it could really benefit from art and kind of the discovery of why people do what they do and that sort of thing. So that's great that you had that opportunity, and I'm really hoping more opportunities come up with, because I know that like when you were doing the Fighter, like I seen quite a few fighters who would give you a shout out and be like, hey, I really appreciate this artwork that you did,
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah. No, it's awesome.
so
So I think recently,
sorry.
Virgil Ortiz, because I started drawing his piece. He actually reposted it on his Instagram, so that was really cool.
Oh, great. I really like Virgil Ortiz. I really love his style.
Yeah,
So that's great. I think he's definitely destined to have a lot of greatness going on himself. So he's doing great.
absolutely. Can't wait.
So yeah, I know that now you're kind of a huge focus has been fashion, and I know that you had, you have a position also for, if I'm pronouncing it right, Yeboah.
Yeah,
Yeboah.
Yeboah.
And that's headed by Reese Yeboah. And you had the
Yes.
Metamorphosis collection come out, and can you just tell me what that whole process was like as well?
See, with that, the connection between me and Reese, it all started from the artworks that I was posting back then also. So it's from doing what I loved, and then that being the bridge. And no, yeah, we were working on this Metamorphosis collection for maybe like a year prior. So it was released on end of February of this year. It was like a collaboration with the brand, Swedish brand Cos. So it's like a 45 piece collection, and the whole story behind it was so the founder Reese Yeboah, it's kind of his journey from growing up in the UK and being sent back to Ghana, and then living there for some years. Obviously, the, the lifestyles are very different from UK and Africa. So basically, it's just like him grabbing that kind of like whole experience of like basically turning into a man whilst being in Ghana, and like seeing the differences between the two cultures, so the British and the Ghanaian, and kind of like fusing that into a collection, a wearable art in a sense. So yeah, we released it, and then the very cool thing is that we were able to do a fashion show in Tate Modern, which is an art gallery in London, a very, very popular art gallery in London. And the whole venue was amazing. So it was just an unforgettable experience, honestly. And just to be a part of it and then see the process behind the scenes of how these things kind of like come together, it's definitely a very good experience to have.
When you put out a collection and when you have a show, how different is your work process there, working in a setting like that versus your own room and all the drawings that you were doing before and now?
Obviously, with them, they're in a cause is an established kind of like brand already, so they operate like a corporate company in a sense. And Yeboah, we're just like a three-man team essentially. So we work from our bedrooms really. So it's just like WhatsApp, sending messages, and that's how we work. And then when we had to kind of come and merge with this corporate company, we kind of have to adapt on how they work. So obviously they work in like teams. There's certain structure to it and whatnot, which I'm kind of like used to, because obviously prior to like going into the fashion industry, I was working at an architecture firm, so I was a architecture assistant. So I was already kind of like used to this how corporate companies kind of like work in teams and whatnot. So it wasn't like a new thing for me. So I was like, oh, it's very similar on how I used to work in an architecture firm. So yeah, no, we just kind of like find the middle ground, because obviously the two brands operate differently, but we're heavy on like visuals. So we had documents, PDFs, 100 pages of just our ideas all there. So all they had to do was flick through and be like, okay, we can do that. Oh no, we can't do that. And then that's pretty much how we just kind of like bounced ideas through visual drawings. And that's where my illustrations came in handy also, because they had the design. So I didn't really design the pieces with Reese. So it was Reese and Sash. So the Sash is like the graphic designer at the brand Yeboah. And they had these designs kind of like mocked up already using Photoshop. It's just individual pieces. And then where I came in was like, I need to make this kind of come alive. So I drew it on people, and like Reese and I kind of like paired the pieces to create the looks. And that's where I did a whole illustrations of the kind of like the looks that we had in mind. And then we presented that to Cos. They loved it. They loved the whole kind of concept of metamorphosis. It's like from growing from a child to a man, and then incorporating all of that kind of idea into the actual color palettes and like the cut silhouettes of the actual pieces of the clothing.
Was like I'm just curious. Could you give a little bit of, for anybody that's not 100% familiar with fashion? I believe your position was art director. Is
On paper, it's art director, but it's like since it's a small brand, there's like three of us. We practically handle whatever is given to us. So like I could be doing logistics, I could be doing like all these very technical things that aren't really much art related or even like more in the business side of things.
true.
But yeah, no, it's very hands-on on everything, really, which is good because it's good to experience things that aren't just like the creative aspects because you get to learn more about like how a business is run, how it operates, all those logistics, those things that when we kind of like buy a product, we don't see like what goes behind it, you know, before it got there on the shelf. So it was a really good experience to see how these things operate within that world of fashion.
When I think of fashion, a lot of people just think about the clothing itself. But with Reese, he has a story behind what he had wanted to bring forward to Cos.
Yeah.
What was it like, kind of, in that process of learning about his story? Like, was it an inspiring experience to learn what he had gone through and everything like that?
Yeah, because it's like those things like you don't really when you meet someone like you wouldn't know, oh damn, that's what they went through. You know, like you don't see the background of someone. You just see them as they are when you see them. So it's really good to actually understand who he is, his experiences are, and I loved how he basically turned those kind of like trials and tribulations into something creative and put that into something that people can wear and enjoy. And when they put it on themselves, they can feel great. So it's like basically turning like a negative to a positive. And I think that's the great aspect that Reese Yeboah has and the brand has too, because it has this raw storytelling that's unique to the person, the founder of the brand.
I was trying to look a little bit more into Reese and his story, and um, are you under the understanding that Yeboah is it necessarily a rebrand of Spirit London, what he was doing previous to that, or is it a whole new
Yeah, so
endeavor?
basically, yeah, he had a previous brand called Saint London, and he operated that alone. Like it was just him for. I think he had that brand for like almost 8 years or even decade. But his logo that he had, it was very similar to one of the teams at the NFL because he was growing big with his brand to the point where it caught the attentions of like the NFL. Like, okay, no, you're using a logo that's similar to one of the teams. And I think that's when they sent a cease and desist to Reese and canceled that. So basically, there was a period of maybe like 2 years where he was like, okay, I need to get back into fashion because obviously his baby brand got slashed and stopped by this huge corporate company that doesn't even have to do with anything to do with fashion. But yeah, I guess it's sort of a rebrand, but then at the same time, it's like a new beginning. So instead of using like the Saint London name, he completely scratched that and just used his namesake name Yeboah to kind of like start again, new beginning, and tell his story, his raw, real story through that brand.
And I misspoke. I said Spirit instead of Saint, so I'm sorry if you're listening,
Oh, no,
Reese.
that's cool.
But I just think isn't it so beautiful and poetic where you have a brand that's kind of taken away from you from a corporate entity, and then you come back with your own name. And how can somebody take away your own name? You know what I mean?
Exactly,
So
exactly.
I didn't really have that knowledge. So it makes 100% sense. Where that direction I went, because I was like,
Hmm.
just I guess for me, like, there's a lot of brands where people use their last name, right? And it always seems like
Yeah,
it's maybe just an extension of who they are, but it seems like in this an extension of what he had gone through, but it's something that also can apply to many people because is the understanding that there's a lot of people that's in his position in the UK?
In what sense?
Like having been sent back, or was it just in his particular case?
I think it was just in this particular case,
Okay.
really, because like most immigrants, we come here into the UK and we pretty much just stay here. We don't really get sent shit back into like back home. But no, even me growing up, that was a threat. Like if you're misbehaving, and like we're gonna ship you back to Philippines, like. But I guess it's the same thing with other immigrants to kind of like straighten their kids, be like, no, if you're not acting straight, we're gonna ship you back to the homeland, you know. But yeah, I guess it's because at least for me, it's something similar.
Yeah, I was even thinking about that too. I mean, is there some things that you've been able to share with Reese and whatnot, with everything that you were working on, where you had somewhat of a similar experience? Because I know that you had said that you're originally from Manila, and then you had come
Yeah,
down. Were you able to share any
yeah,
similar experiences?
yeah. Pretty much like the way his his kind of like journey. So with the upbringing, and obviously it's not his main kind of like where he was born. He just came here. It's just like similar to me. So I kind of understood how he felt in like that situation. Because obviously, it's only you can only really understand those things if you've lived it. Like you could say, oh, I understand that, oh, those feelings, but then like leaving your homeland, coming into a whole different new country that you don't speak that language, people are culture is different. It's you only understand what if you've actually gone through that whole experience of moving to a whole new different country.
Yeah, and I can't relate myself, but I do understand that there is like a bit of a clash, right? Because you have your own, culture and ideas and things, and then when you go to another country that has their own, and you're trying to discover again who you are in this new space, I can only imagine
Absolutely.
what that's like going through that. So I appreciate you sharing that, because I was just curious myself if there was any connections regarding that when Reese's story was brought up. I wanted to talk now about kind of something that I discovered just in looking in for this interview. Uh, I know that we've kind of taken a different path. You've went through architecture school, then you had started doing the drawings, but now are going into design and fashion design, and your own, developing your own brand and working with brands. And I had seen that you had talked about how you were watching in 2017 Virgil, Abloh, and Samuel Ross, and I kind of looked into them, and they have a very similar background.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Can you kind of talk about um, you know how important they are to you, and everything that you're doing right now?
Yeah, so I discovered these guys. So Virgil Abloh is a multi-hyphenate designer, creative, and same with Samuel Ross. So I actually came across them in 2016. So I was still in my first year of architecture school in university, and I came across them, and they were these creatives making a noise within the streetwear culture and fashion. And obviously back then I was very into that scene, and I was like, wow, this is really cool. I like what we're doing. Like they don't have a traditional background of like going to a fashion school, but they're able to penetrate these industries by just doing what they do. And that excited kind of like captured my imagination because obviously I was in architecture. I thought I was going to be an architect, but then I saw these guys, especially like Virgil Abloh. He had a background in architecture, so I saw that parallel. I was like, okay, if I don't really like architecture, I could actually go and meander into this other direction, similar to Virgil Abloh, like into the fashion world. Because obviously, growing up, I didn't really think fashion would be a career path that I could viably take. So that's why I chose architecture, because it sounded very prestige in a way, and it sounded credible. So I thought, okay, why not? But then I I did the whole architecture school thing, and I was like, no, this isn't for me. Like there is no reason for me to stay here. Let me follow the blueprints that Samuel Ross, Virgil Abloh, what they've done, because they both have like Samuel Ross. He has a background in graphic design, so he did that in university, and then Virgil Abloh architecture and engineering, and they it's like completely two different things, but then they managed to penetrate into a whole different industry. So I was like, okay, let me just follow the steps that they've already laid out. And I watched loads of their interviews and YouTube videos back to back to back, back to back. And then now that I'm actually like in there, I'm like, wow, I'm actually living what I used to be watching back then when I was just kind of like looking at their come up. And I'm like, okay, we're on the right path. We're living what I used to be watching. So I was like, okay, good. We're in the right path for this.
What got you like into to watching their videos to begin with? Is it just something that came up, or you just liked? You have you always had a thing for fashion, even growing up?
Yeah, so back then in 2016, Virgil Abloh was making a huge kind of like noise because he did like a collaboration with Nike called the Tens, where he was able to redesign these iconic Nike shoes. So one of them being the Air Jordan Nikes, the number ones amongst other designs, and that really kind of like shook the street culture. And that's where I kind of like first came across his works. I was like, "Ooh, who's this guy?" And then I started to kind of read on his background. For me, it's always there's a story behind the person that always captures my imagination. I mean, their work is great, but then it's like the story behind before actually reaching that point where they created this beautiful product. But yeah, no, that's kind of how I came across it because the usually when designers are like designing things, especially an iconic silhouette like the Air Jordan ones, usually they only get to design one thing. But then with Virgil Abloh, he was able to design 10 iconic silhouettes from the Nike brand and the Air Jordan brand. That was like unheard of. That's why it made such a noise back then in 2016.
And I guess to you, like, what do these established brands mean to you? Because I know you're starting off. You're more of a smaller designer brand. What do these brands mean to you? Like Nike.
Actually, with Nike, I watched that their recent movie of Air Jordan. It was called Air. So uh, it was showing the story behind Nike and how they were kind of they were falling behind in terms of like the sneaker scene, so like the trainers and stuff. And there was like a pivoting moment where they took their chance on this guy Michael Jordan, which was he was still a rookie at that time, but there was glances of like, okay, this guy could be the next guy, the next great. But obviously, not everyone could see that. But it was like the people at Nike, they saw that okay, this guy, we need to bet on this guy and just go all in. And then they did that. They created the Air Jordan ones, and which is the most iconic shoe from Nike. And it's like it's to this day, it's heavily like sought after by everyone, especially when there's like limited releases and whatnot. But yeah, it's just seeing those things like they all started like that huge corporate giant of a company. They all started somewhere small. So then when I kind of like understood that, I was like, okay, it may take years and years and decades, whatnot, but it's better to just start now and build and build and build and build brick by brick, because it'll be imminent. Like if you constantly attack and build every single day, you will get to that point where, okay, wow, now I have a empire. Now I have a built building that houses all these creativity that I could manifest or whatnot. But yeah, no, it's just an inspiring thing to see, really.
This is a very broad question, so I understand if it's hard to answer,
Yeah.
but I know earlier you talked about the Sean Porter podcast, how you saw kind of a vision of the future and how it would look. Have you always had this ability to kind of envision maybe the future of something, or seeing what you, putting your own stamp on things?
I think it goes back to like the boxing stuff. When you you see these people that are coming up, there's just something about them. Like you see that they're hungry. The hunger is there. Like forget passion, forget everything else. Like hunger, it's like a necessity. You need to eat. So you see this. So basically, a metaphor, really. So you see the hunger in their eyes and the way they kind of like how to present themselves. So you see that, and you're like, okay, they're onto something, or they see something that maybe the next person that's standing next to them might not be able to see. But if you're someone in that same kind of boat, it might not be boxing, but obviously you have a grand vision for something else for yourself. You kind of see in other people like, okay, yeah, I can see, I recognize that look in his eyes, the hunger in his eyes. I think it's that when I come across people like that, when I see like the hunger in their eyes type of thing, I'm like, okay, they might not be popping now, or they might be just beginning, or yeah, they might not have the followings right now, but you can see that, okay, they're gonna go to places. Like it's just a matter of time, really. Then that's how I see things, really. Same with you, with this good people, bad intentions. It's going places, man. It's gonna go to places,
Yeah,
and I'm glad to be a part of it.
thank you. No, I see really like both of our brands and the development and everything like that. I feel like they're very compatible. They live in the same universe. If this was like
Hmm.
the Justice League or the we're all on the same planet
Exactly.
315. We're all on the same planet here, and I feel like we're all, yeah. I think we're trying to go for similar things as far as message and the future of the sport and the future, like one thing I really appreciate about what you're doing right now, and I understand how difficult it is, but I'll just give it from a podcast point of view. I'll give it from a podcast point of view, right? There's only X amount of people that are interested in specific boxing related things, and then there are a lot of people though that know a little bit about boxing, or they know what boxing, like popular boxers and what they've said in the past and stuff, and like example, like Muhammad Ali is such a cultural figure that almost everybody knows what he said. And I always ask myself, like, how do you just supersede just that one area that you're in to hit everything? And then it kind of goes back to what you're all about, greatness, right? When you become great at something, it kind of goes beyond just that one thing you're in. And that's what I really appreciate about your brand lately is when you're going into fashion, but you have that architecture mindset, boxing mindset. I think it's a very interesting take on the industry.
Absolutely. And what I've noticed is also it's like it's different. Like when I compare myself to like the Virgil Ablohs, Samuel Rosses, they're more kind of like catered towards like the street culture, like the graffiti, the skateboarding, all of those type of things. But then I haven't really seen anyone who's like a heavy boxing fan, like, like really in there with it's not just like the casual stuff, like you're really deep in there in the history of boxing that likes the sport and implementing that within fashion. Because obviously in boxing, fashion is a heavy thing too. Like you have like they love to dress flashy, like even with the ring walks, they have all these flashy fight gears and everything. So they go hand in hand, fashion and boxing, and that's the beautiful thing about it, because then it's universal. That's why I was like, you know what? That's why I knew in my deep down in myself, okay, there's something here with the Galanacci brand, because it combines boxing and all these other ideas into one umbrella, which I haven't seen any other brands do. I mean, you would have like brands like that would touch up on boxing for a bit, but it's just like a kind of like a cash grab type of thing, like because it's what's popular at that moment. But for me, it's the base of my brand, like the whole philosophy of the brand is built on the philosophy of a fighter in boxing. And especially like the stories of like Muhammad Ali, Mike Tyson, Jack Johnson, all of these other greats, the stories that they have all influence the way I kind of like operate my brand and G the Fire and everything else that I do. Because it's the story that connects with the people, really. At the end of the day, it's the stories that kind of like brings us together. And that's where I'm kind of like attacking, really.
You brought up trunks and flashy trunks. Just wanted to say huge thank you when I said, hey, you should like make for one of your designs. It's like you should make like boxing trunks, and he's like, next day boxing trunks with. I was like, dang, look at this guy. He's just going at it. So I was like, I thought that really made my day when that came out. I was like, wow,
that's awesome.
Because I said this, like I've been working with some architects. Stay tuned for some more stuff. But weirdly enough, like, and this is maybe just a weird thing that I had as a kid, but I kind of wanted to be an architect, and I realized that it's not what I want to do now.
I see.
It's not The Sims. But now, like, being able to talk to creative people has been one of my favorite things in this life right now, is talking to creative people, because there's just nothing it almost seems like nothing's impossible when you talk to some creative people. And
yeah, absolutely,
it's so inspiring, and I love when creative people have a vision for what they want to do, and oftentimes it's a very positive vision for maybe some of their surroundings that they're going through right now, or everything like that. And I just love when people have a positive view of the future, because at least it's something to work towards,
absolutely.
And I just wanted to kind of put things on a little more lighthearted note. So when I first saw you, you had very long hair. Now you got shorter hair.
Did.
Was there any? I got a couple questions, but the first question was: is there a lot of comments when you cut the hair off?
I don't really I didn't pay attention. Oh, they were mostly like shocked, because obviously I had the long hair for like maybe at that length a solid year or two, and then next day, boom, buzz cut. Like there was no chill. There's no gradual kind of take to it. It's just from long to very buzz cut short. But no, there's a reason behind it. Like I grew my hair out because I was like, it takes patience to grow hair. So let me put myself in that kind of like cycle, because it took 3 years. It took about 3 years for me to fully grow that hair long. And I was like, it was a personal challenge for myself. I was like, I need to be patient enough to grow my hair long. And there was days where I'm like, oh, I want to cut this shit off, because it's just not it anymore. Like it was getting on my face. Like I always had it tied up, baby hairs sprouting out. Like it just didn't even look good at some point. But yeah, no, it's just a thing for me. Like an exercise is a very dramatic exercise, really, to just grow your hair out to teach yourself patience. But yeah, no, that's what I did, and what I discovered behind it is like it's almost like a cycle, like the seasons, right? You're not gonna look the same every year, like every year. So from my hair growing from short to long, I saw it as like a cycle, a season, like a 3 year cycle, like a very long one. So then now I chopped it all off. It's beginning again, the whole 3 year cycle. I actually donated it to like this charity called Princess Trust, and they use their hair to create wigs for like children with cancer. So I also wanted to do a little something, some good. So it wasn't just like I cut it off and then that's it, done. So then I think now it'll be just a thing that I'll be doing every 3 years, where I grow my hair out, cut it off, donate it to charity, do some good with it whilst I still have hair, like, and that's pretty much it, really.
Hey, that's great that you did it for a good cause, and that's great that you also took a challenge to. Yeah, I get that awkward stage after like 2 months. I can't imagine 3 years. Like,
Yeah,
going
yeah,
through all the
yeah, no.
different. Yeah, going through the different the hairstyle stuff. And was anybody going and saying, are you an Eminem fan? Are you Slim Shady when you dyed it?
Yeah, 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 yeah. No, I saw it myself too. I was like, oh, I look like Eminem here, Slim Shady. Yeah, no, there's a couple of people like slid in like the DMs. Oh, you look like Slim Shady. I'm like, yeah, yeah. I like the look too. Like I made it work. I was like, wow, it looked good on me.
Was it
Like,
on brand?
I can't wait to get back to it.
Was it on brand with like the whole Metamorphosis collection? Was that like,
Oh yeah,
what?
it was
Yeah,
too.
yeah,
It
yeah.
was too because it was the whole yellow thing. So yeah, no, no, yeah. When we had that fashion show, the people we were working with at Cos, they knew me as the long hair guy, and the next thing you know, buzz cut, blonde hair, like you have a new look. Like, I was like, oh, I did it for this fashion event, just for this day. But no, yeah, it just kind of lined up, which is great.
Yeah, I wanted to end things on kind of like a lighthearted note. I know you've been still keeping up with your boxing training, and I see that May has been
Mm.
involved with that as well.
Yes.
What has it been like, boxing and still keeping up with the sport even today?
So yeah, yeah, May is my girlfriend, and she also loves boxing too. She grew up on Pacquiao, so we both kind of like have the interests in boxing. And she actually wants into like to get into like what do you call it, acting and stuff, like mainly like action type of roles. So I was like, you know what, let me teach you some boxing, because obviously back in university I was already participating in the boxing club there, and I was doing it for some couple of years. So I was teaching her some things here and there, and then we bought some headgears, and we, you know what, let's just do it. Let's spar. And then no, it's good. It's fun. It's fun. We haven't actually sparred for like some time now because the weather's a bit shit, always raining, and she's a bit busy with her architecture degree. But yeah, no, I love it. It's a good way of like exercising and then relieving some stress in a way too. It's very controlled. So like I'm very controlled with my how I pull my punches and stuff. But with her, she doesn't know how to pull her punches yet. So it's like sometimes it's like some bombs in there landing. But no, it's good. It's good.
Was there any
It's good.
like interesting like onlooker conversations or anything? 'Cause I know you're doing it like in public sometimes and outside in the
Yeah,
park.
yeah, yeah.
Like,
No, there was one time where because we were obviously it's in a residential place. We were practicing. It was like it wasn't even late. It was like 5 p.m. And then someone came out like, "Oh, we appreciate what you're doing, but my girlfriend's sleeping." It was literally like by the window because obviously the punches were loud because we're doing pad work, and you're like breathing the whole breathing thing, so it's quite loud. And we're like, "Oh, so we're sorry, we're sorry." So I think that was like one of the proper one that stood out.
Yeah, where
But yeah,
people
no,
are
it's
like
great.
saying
It's fun.
street beefs, like you start some kind of UK chapter where like anybody got a
Yeah,
problem,
yeah.
take it out.
Oh no, yeah. No,
No.
it's funny because like in my head, I'm like, you don't really see people sparring in your day-to-day life. Like it must be very weird for them to just casually walk in and then you see these two people with headgears and just throwing hands. But yeah, no, no, it's great. It's great.
Yeah,
Great
I
exercise.
think
Gets the heart rate up.
I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there, because like it's just weird, like for how much boxing, mixed martial arts has been, like people are very private about their training, and not everybody obviously, but like there's
Mm.
like a lot of boxers, even like where I am, like you wouldn't know, because they only do it
Yeah,
inside of a
yeah,
very enclosed space, very specific
yeah.
enclosed space. And I've even like tried to shadow box like at different work environments and stuff, and then you get this random person walking down the hall, like what the heck's going on? And you're just like, well,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
just practicing beating somebody up in the air, I guess,
Yeah, no, it's very true because you don't actually see boxers training unless you go to these gyms. Other than that, you don't. So even if you saw someone shadow boxing, you'd be like, what the hell are they doing? Like, what is that? Because they don't know. They don't know that that's a training. That's part of the training.
Yeah, well, hey, I just wanted to say I'm really thankful for you coming back on the show, sharing everything that you've been going on and doing. I think it's very inspirational. I really always look forward to seeing your posts, especially regarding the daily posts, because of the fact that this is no easy task, in my opinion, because of the amount of discipline, dedication, and me knowing that there is those days where it just, you might have a hard schedule or things going on. So it's really inspirational that you're doing all that stuff, and I really look forward to seeing what comes out of all this stuff. As much as the diary stuff had done and made other stuff,
Yeah.
I'm excited to see what this now creates in your designing future.
Thank you. And so it's always a pleasure to be in your podcast, Matthew, man.
Thank you so much.
Always showing me love, man.
Thank you. And guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode of the podcast. I always enjoy talking to Galanacci. One thing that you can't really take away from him is his consistency. This isn't the first time that he's tried to do a 1-year challenge. And I know for me, myself, I struggle doing something for even a month. So the fact that he's been able to do multiple of these types of projects, he's talking about how, with regards to the diary, which is one of the projects he had done, it kind of developed his style for G the Fighter and the collection that he's been doing with that. So it just seems whenever he's consistently creating something, that there's an off product of it for something that he can do in the future. So I'm really excited to see maybe some of these designs that he's working on to actually be created and put into a collection, because he's very passionate about what he does. And I think it's a very rare thing, honestly, to be as hungry as he is in what he's doing. And he's constantly trying to improve, and he's always trying to try new things. And I also really like that he's not just constrained by the boxing community. I mean, I love you guys, the boxing community, as well as the mixed martial arts community. But really, that's only one element of life. So if we can expand beyond that, which he has done with, just the focus on greatness and how many people in different areas of life and in different interests try to achieve greatness. I think he's really taking something that I think a lot of people throughout history have wanted to say, and he's making it into a brand, and I think it's great. And so I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast with him. And as always, guys, if you're listening to this for the first time, really love to hear what you guys think. Please feel free to leave a comment, like, subscribe if you're wanting to keep up with the podcast. And if you're listening to the podcast, you can also leave a rating, and you can also subscribe to it on there. And that way, when a new episode comes out, you won't miss it. So without further ado, guys, until I see you next time, I hope you have a good time whenever you listen to the podcast, and take care. Bye.
Yo, the ring general, sweet science deep like a mineral. You can see the hunger in my interviews. Peep the interlude, this is just a preview. Give you all I got, put the past in the rear view. My team ready, the theme steady. Got bad intentions like I seen Petty. Still a good dude. Stay humble, never messy, never crumble under pressure. I'm shining like God bless me.